Hello everyone, for today's session I will talk about the most important theory of language acquisition. Normally we call them language acquisition, language development, and language of learning. They are the same, but there are major conceptual differences between the terms of them, like acquisition, development, and learning. To know them more about the theory of language acquisition, keep on watching this and enjoy! What kind of teacher are you? Are you the kind of teacher that gives rewards and punishments to your students? Or the group activities and collaborative work always in your lesson plan? Do your students automatically stand up and greet you at the moment you step inside the classroom? Or do you strictly follow routines in your classrooms? Well, these are some teaching practices that you might be doing in your class. But did you know that these practices are influenced by your educational philosophies? And these philosophies are based on different theories of learning. Theories of learning attempts to describe how humans learn, how one creates, uses, and manages learning resources. Tool practices or methodology depends greatly on one's beliefs about how people learn, one's view of how learning takes place. And it can also affect decision making about educational policies. Theories of learning offers different perspectives and frameworks for understanding how individuals acquire knowledge, skills, and behaviors. Some of the major theoretical foundations includes behaviorism, nativism, cognitive approach, and interactionist approach. These theories provide varying explanations for the learning process and emphasize different factors and mechanisms involved. What is behaviorism? Behaviorism, also known as behaviorist or behavioral theory of language. It is a psychological theory that focuses on observable behaviors and external stimuli as the basis for learning. The person who propounded this theory is B.F. Skinner, and he was an American psychologist, and most important elements in behaviorism are reward and punishment, that learning takes place thanks to reward and punishment. Skinner believes that language acquisition, like any other behavior, can be observed rather than trying to explain the mental system underlying this type of behaviors. To him, children are born with blank state of mind or tabula rasa. He believes that children acquire first language through stimuli given to them, and the responses of children are conditioned through reinforcement. Positive response is positive reinforcements. Negative response means negative reinforcement. However, this simplistic view of first language acquisition received criticism, mainly from the advocates of anatheist theory, among whom Chomsky. He was an American linguist, and he was one of the proponents of nativism. Nativism is a theory that suggests humans are born with an innate capacity for acquiring language and knowledge. Chomsky believed that children are equipped with an innate template or blueprint for language called LAD or language acquisition device. In epistemology, nativism implies that ideas are innate. They are present in our mind from the moment we are born. The belief that ideas are innate is first found in the works of Plato, but was resurrected by the nationalist philosophers in the 17th and 18th century, such as René Descartes and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, and has been defended by the most recently by two of the 20th century foremost mentalists, namely Noam Chomsky and Thierry Fodor. Fodor has argued that the vast majority of our concepts are innate. Chomsky view less radical than Fodor, but radical enough is that much of our knowledge of natural language is inborn. In language acquisition, it is defined as the study of the process by which a person learns a language. And nativist theories hypothesize that language is an innate fundamental part of the human genetic makeup, and language acquisition occurs as a natural part of human experience. In fact, nativist theorists contend that children are born with an innate ability to organize laws of language, which has in turn enabled them to easily learn a native language, which also called universal grammar. As the nativist theorists argued, children learn the native language naturally, even if we do not teach them formally, and children have language specific abilities that assist them as they work towards mastering a language. In this theory's proponents determine that language and cognitive abilities are biologically determined and develop naturally. Now, let's move on to the third theory, namely cognitive approach. It focuses on the mental processes like problem solving, memory, and information processing as central to learning. And the proponent of this theory is Jean Piaget, and he was a Swiss psychologist. And the principles of this theory is that learning is an active process influenced by cognitive structures and schemas. In this theory, a child has to understand a concept before she or he can acquire the particular language form which expresses that concept. On the other hand, child cannot move on to learning a new language skill until she or he is intellectually ready for the next stage. In relation to the language acquisition, a good example of this is seriation. There will be a point in a child's intellectual development when he or she can compare objects with respect to size. This means that if you gave the child a number of sticks, he or she could arrange them in order of size. Piaget suggested a child who had not yet reached the stage would not be able to learn and use comparative adjectives like bigger or smaller. The last theory that we will tackle is all about interactionist approach or social interactionism. In this theory, these consider the role of the social environment more carefully when it comes to language acquisition, and this brings us to what we called an interactionist approach. Because this recognizes that we seem to have a genetic predisposition for language acquisition that others animals don't have. But we also have a social environment that plays an important role in full development of language ability. So, when we think about the way children develop language, it's not the case that they simply sit there listening to adults talk and then one day they jump into the conversation, right? Instead, we say that there's this process of development, and adults and event, other children are actively involved in shaping the development. It also the case that children aren't simply learning language, right? They're not just learning vocabulary and synthetical rules, right? And they're learning how to interact with others and they're learning how to communicate. So this brings us to what a researcher named Jerome Bruninger and which referred to as the language acquisition support system, and this was an contrast to Noam Chomsky language acquisition device. That idea of this genetic predisposition is that so Brunner suggests that we have this language support system. These are the features of the social environment that help language ability to emerge. So it's not the case that adults simply talk and children listen and they develop language about adults to the things like direct the child's attention to certain things and they tell a child that the focus on and they ask questions to the child and then they level things, so they point things and say this This is a dog, this is a cat, and they provide feedback when the child makes mistake. So when the child has learned the words dogs and then letter sees a cat and points to it and says dog, and the adult can say no, actually this is a cat, and they provide support system, or this is called scaffolding that allows the language to develop more fully. And there's another thing that different way of that adults interact with children. They don't speak to them like adults, right? They just um they use language in order to help the child to develop his or her own language ability, and this is often referred to as motherese or caregiver talk or baby talk, and this is a common feature in all sorts of languages, and this is the part of this environment that's helping the child to develop language ability and helping the child to communicate to another. And and so, in conclusion, in this theory, which is one of the principles, is that learning is influenced by both external factors and internal cognitive processes. In conclusion, these theories shape our understanding of how people learn and provide valuable frameworks for educational practices and intervention. This is Judeline Baatro reminds you that a lesser known pathway toward happiness is learning, growing, and challenging ourselves in a new ways. I hope you gained something in this discussion. Happy learning. Goodbye.